Welcome to episode 3 of these journeys through queer circus. In this episode, we take a ride with 4 educators, trainers, and pedagogues as they tell us about their dreams, their visions, and their ideas of a present and a future queer circus. Hello, Ania.
Hello.
Thank you so much for being a part of this journey, this thing that I'm calling the Journeys Through Queer Circus, and your presence is a delight already. Even before we've started our conversation, I want to thank you for it.
It's a delight to be here. Thank you for having me.
Excellent. Well, you were gracious enough to share a bio that those of you who are watching where my eyes go will go, oh, it is printed there. So I will read a bit of your bio so that others may know a bit more fully about you. So Ania, Ania Upstill. You are a queer and non-binary performer, director, theater maker, teaching artist, and clown. A graduate of the Del Arte International School of Physical Theater at the Professional Training Program. Your recent work celebrates LGBTQIA+ artists with a focus on gender diversity. In 2021, you worked with New York and in New Zealand, co-creating the queer ballet Sapphic Lake, Into the Bush, a queer circus theater project, and Proud Voices, an audio festival that played internationally in 3 major cities. I've just got to say, wow. And then your solo clown show, Transhumans, please correct me because I wanted to say that in the French way, Transhumans, was awarded a Best Weekly Award in Circus and Physical Theater at the Adelaide Fringe Festival in 2020. So with that, extraordinary. With that, then, as an official blurb of thing or two, I have to do the follow-up question. What do you think our global audiences need to really know about you and really know about your work?
Okay, well, my work tends to be, as I think is pretty clear from that description, working in the sort of queer or the rainbow or the LGBTQIA+ space. And I can't decide exactly what I want to focus on most of the time, so I kind of do lots of varying things. But I think I always come to it from a place of clown and curiosity and wanting to make more and more work and more spaces that are really queer and really queer inclusive.
Stunning. Thank you. Part of that work you have been gracious enough to share some images about, and some of those may be playing indeed as we begin to talk a bit more fully. I'm wondering if you could set some of those images up for us.
Of course. So I shared a couple headshots, and I think I'm just interested in what images of non-binary people look like. So that's kind of the instinct behind that, is like how we present ourselves, what we decide looks good on us is very much diverse, and it's also can be very specific. And then I also wanted to share a couple different clown photos or photos from my work. So there's a photo in whiteface, which is actually from when I was at Del Arte School of International Theater. I haven't performed in whiteface very often since then, partly because I'm actually very lazy and it's a lot of makeup and it's very greasy. And also because I don't think, to me, clowning is more than putting on a red nose. So there are, in the other images, I am wearing a red nose, and I have been wearing a red nose in my solo show. And I'm kind of thinking that maybe I won't anymore. There's also a challenge of making sure it stays on if you're really physical. So That's something I've been mulling over. Like, how do you make it clear that it's clown if you're not wearing a red nose? Anyway, you'll see me wearing a red nose. And then the last images are from Into the Bush, which was the queer circus theater show I made earlier in the year. So they're not of me, but they're of some of the fabulous queer performers who are in that show.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Maybe now is a moment to dig just a little bit more fully about your own experience as a queer artist and doing queer work. Your challenges, your joys, what drives you, what's your passion?
Yeah, I think what used to come up for me more and has been less so, especially as I made my own work, is not finding roles or spaces within work where I could be myself. And that's what I strive to do for other queer artists across gender and sexuality. And especially when I was doing my training, and I know we're going to talk about teaching, but especially when I was doing my training, I found that it was really limiting because I didn't find that some of the ways that we were being trained, especially in very specific disciplines, really spoke to how I felt about myself and what I knew about myself. So that's a challenge that I kind of went through and then went, well, never mind, I'll just make my own work. And so I think the rewards of that are getting to really play in these really interesting spaces and incorporating theater and drag, which I think is a very queer form, into circus, and just seeing what kind of works and what kind of sticks. And the rewards, I think, for myself and for people that I work with who are queer artists and maybe haven't had those experiences, is really getting to be yourself on stage, or be your identity on stage, not necessarily yourself. And the rewards for the audience are getting to see themselves, and also just to see diverse representation, because I think it's really satisfying. Like, seeing something that you haven't seen before is really fun.
The joy that you ended on, that started with the challenge. You speak a language that I know that I resonate with, and I suspect that several of us others that are listening and experiencing your talk will also thrive to hearing that work. Yeah, you know we're talking about training. With this particular episode's focus indeed on pedagogy and training, or at least experiences thereof. Tell us more. Do you do queer ways of training, queer ways of engaging? Do you have a relationship between training and pedagogy and queer work? Take us away.
Definitely. So I think in a way, for me, it fits into sort of two aspects. And one of those is the practical aspects of incorporating things like saying your pronouns along with your name when you introduce yourself. So inviting that into our spaces. And I've seen that happen more and more in theater and in circus, just as a way of, not having to then out yourself. I use they, them pronouns, otherwise it becomes on me to be like, hi, I'm the one who uses what you don't expect. So there's practical things like that, having, unisex or non-gendered bathrooms, just to make these spaces more comfortable. And then I think it gets into, allowing there to be space for people to kind of choose how they want to be in a space, even within a discipline. So I guess the easiest way for me to talk about it is I do partner acrobatics, or adagio, and I mostly prefer being a bass. And I'm like a very middle-sized human. So, I actually don't really fit anyway, but within the sort of very traditional, like, large person, small person, but being able to play in that space, and I was lucky in having trainers who were kind of let us choose and let us play. And so I think even thinking about things like, I don't know, I feel like, silks and fabric have this kind of like, they're so feminine, and straps are masculine. And I'm like, well, I actually prefer straps. And even within those spaces, how can people get to play, get to experiment? And so I think it's also as trainers thinking through, how do we allow people to be themselves, and thinking about how do we allow people to opt in or out of certain things if they don't make them feel comfortable. So there's some stuff around like consent, or like being like, we're going to work on this. If you don't want to work on it, here's this other thing, this other way. And like actually having that be a bit of a conversation, And yeah, thinking we don't have to teach how we were taught, I think is the other thing. I feel that very strongly as a clown teacher. I'm like, actually, I loved my clown teachers, and clown is often taught in a very harsh way. And I don't want to teach that way. And I don't want to teach in a way, when I teach Commedia dell'arte, which is an incredibly gendered form, that's not how I teach it. I kind of say, here's some archetypes, but also like, here's just the body of it. But we don't have to, do that. And we don't have to make it about this sort of like very strong male female dichotomy. It's like, what else is there in the character? So yeah, those are some of my thoughts.
Extraordinary. The allowing play while asking for work. Once again, joy and challenge. Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Could you tell us a little bit more about any particular realities on the ground there where you work? I am struck as I'm watching you that I am in upstate New York. Well, I have winter outside of my window. You don't have winter outside your window.
No, I'm in New Zealand and there's summer. It's blue skies. It's a beautiful summer's day. I'm so sorry. I feel like I should have locked myself in a room. Not tempted you.
Yeah, but with that in mind, it's just simply a visual reminder that we do have different realities, right? And I'm wondering if you could speak to realities on the ground for you there.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a very obvious reality that at this particular time in the world, we can train in person and touch each other, which is really fantastic. Yeah. In the sort of broader ecosystem within New Zealand, I think that because it's a small country and it's a small population, and schools tend to be hold the spectrum of casual to professional, it's actually a kind of really nice space to be able to play, because I think that training institutions often are in a space of holding more different types of students. And I think that actually as a queer trainer, if we're thinking about how to include more different types of people, more generally, not just queer people, it is an opportunity to kind of look at training and to sort of go, well, we've gone this far, and sort of offering these different things. And I should say, I think, people are doing that work, and really expanding training and opportunities isn't just about queerness. It really is intersectional. So, I mean, as I'm sure like training tends to be a very privileged space. It's often a very white space. I'm white, and I, even just trying to cast circus shows, it's really, really hard. And I think it's probably hard most places in terms of trying to make them diverse across all sorts of ways, right? Across queerness, across race, across any sort of disability, across body size. I think we can do a lot in terms of expanding what we think of as a circus body in all of these many, many ways. And I go back to how important representation is for people just getting into circus, which is one of the things that drives me, is just going, you kind of can't be what you can't see. I mean, you can, and the internet has a lot of resources, luckily now, which is better. But I just had people, really audience members come up to me and just say, thank you, because it feels so expansive.
That leads me maybe to this last question. It seems to me like maybe you are participating in the work of which I'm going to ask. How can we make circus more queer friendly?
It's a great question. Actually, unrelated to what I was just saying, which is all true. I think let's make our spaces more intersectional. Let's put more people who don't look like you're what we assume in images online, all these things. I actually think we need to not assume that our audiences want straight circus. Actually, because I feel like that's the same, I guess the same thing across all sorts of representation is I feel like there's this assumption that audiences only want the same thing again and again and again and again. And I just don't think it's true, because on the one hand, especially when you're talking about queerness, if someone who's homophobic wants to read a two male presenting people in a duet, they're just going to read it as a friendship, like probably, unless it's very explicit. And just like, I think we can assume that our audiences are actually more intelligent than maybe the baseline assumption is, because they have people in their lives a lot of the time. So that's actually, that's maybe my like big, like, let us challenge our audiences. Because also, I mean, audiences go to the circus to be amazed, right? So let's let them be amazed at all sorts of things that they may have not seen, but great.
Once again, you take us to the end with the notion of joy and amazement. And I want to thank you. Thank you for where you've taken us.
Oh, thank you so much, Charles. This has been a delight. So good.
Hello, Adam.
Hi, Charles. How are you?
Beautiful on this morning here, and I'm delighted to be able to talk to you and to explore your contributions to our journeys through queer circus. Thank you for being a part of this thing.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So brilliant. So for our viewers, listeners, experiences to know a little bit about you, Adam Woolley, I actually have an official biography that I can read that has been in circus education for the past 15 years. After leaving his position as programs director for the Philadelphia School of Circus Arts and creative outreach director for Circadium in 2021, he, that would be you, are pleased to continue offering private lessons and small classes as adjunct faculty. You've also served as the safety committee chair for the American Circus Educators Association. You've coached professionals around the country. You've co-produced 5 international circus showcases as Circus Now's managing director during your time living in New York City. You worked with Summer Stage, and I think there are even more commas to that sentence. Among the things you also done is working with the Smithsonian and the National Endowment for the Arts. Welcome.
Thank you.
So with all of that sort of said now, with this official verve, can you tell us a bit more about what we're going to be seeing about you? The words added to an image. Could you lay out some of that, some of those images that you've shared for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So my kind of unofficial resume is that I was one of the very first people to go to the New England Center for Circus Arts and go through their professional track program, you know, in 2006, 2007. My interest in circus kind of predated the huge explosion, especially in circus education, that we've seen over the past, 10 or 15 years, which was a really exciting thing to see, I moved to New York with ideas about being a performer, discovered that, in fact, my skill set was not really great. And so I started coaching, and more, at least in my own mind, more importantly than coaching, started advocating for circus arts in kind of theater and dance spaces, right? And that led to the whole, fun adventure that was Circus Now, prior to coming here to Philadelphia and really finding myself as an educator, right? I really believe in circus education. I really believe in like the approaches that social circus takes to youth development. I was really excited and proud about my role in the American Circus Educators Association. And then COVID happened, it's kind of like Adam was, the programs director at this school until 2021. And I'm like, what happened in 2021 that might have inspired a change in direction for anybody? So that's sort of the unofficial place of where I come from. And it comes from a really deep belief in the power of circus arts to allow for opportunities to move beyond cultural norms. I think, circus is that space, and it's that space in performing arts, and it's that space in education. And I think those two fields are really deeply related to each other, especially here in America.
Well, why don't we pursue a little bit more about that? Your role as an artist, educator, advocate that you've been speaking so eloquently about. Could you tell us more about those particular challenges? Huh?
Oh man, those challenges are manifold, and somehow also really, I think, natural for any queer person. I'm excited to be on like a panel about queerness because I was a performing artist for a very, very small part of my career, and wasn't very good at it, and also didn't really enjoy it. But I do find that there's an extent to which most queer people are really used to advocacy and really used to, especially like educational advocacy. I remember just kind of swaths of my youth. It was the 90s and it was North Carolina, and I was not ever in the closet. I came out of the closet like in high school in North Carolina in the 90s. And so really quickly realized that like my role in high school life was to advocate for queerness and advocate for being gay, and to do that through education, like to answer people's stupid questions about what it meant that I was gay or what it meant that I was queer. And so that really sort of instinctive social role extended in my professional life as I was talking with theater people and dance people who had just really simple questions about what circus was and what circus meant and where circus comes from, and really simple misinterpretations of circus's role in the cultural sphere. Like, circus arts, that's a very small field. That's like, that you guys are a very, very tiny community. And like, what does it mean? What does circus mean? And I'm like, well, actually, it's not a small field. Like, actually, if you look at the number of people who watch Cirque du Soleil every year and put it together with the number of people who watch, like Ringling Brothers or Universal or touring arena shows every year, and if you look at the money that comes in through the circus arts industry, like circus arts is actually probably the largest live performing art in the United States. And for some reason, we don't call it an art. For some reason, we call all of that entertainment. And of course, contemporary circus has had a hard time getting a foothold in specifically like American theaters, right? But I always kind of ask myself this question, which is, why does American circus want to be in American theaters? How does the fact that we call these arena shows entertainment and these shows art contribute to like the promotion of cultural hierarchy in America, where like art is this and it lives in this theater and in these hallowed halls of dub, right? And why isn't this art, right? And I think this is a question that has really formed my professional career as an advocate, and has also made me kind of unpopular in some circles where I was going like, well, is your institution upholding cultural hierarchy? And asking these questions to people who really honestly didn't want to hear these questions. And kind of, it was a hard place to be sometimes.
So now that you've landed this challenge for us all, actually, thank you. I'm wondering if you can lay out for us your idea of what it means to be on the mat, to be in the air, to be in the studio with other artists. Is there a queer pedagogy at play? Is there some things that you want to foreground or erase along the way?
Bell Hooks has this incredible quote about queerness. And since we are recently rest in peacing Bell Hooks, I really want to pull up this quote about queerness and not paraphrase it. I think it segues nicely into what I think about circus. Queer, not as being about who you're having sex with, that can be a dimension of it, but queer as being about the self that is at odds with everything around it and has to invent and create and find a place to speak and to thrive and to live. And this is a quote of Bell Hooks's. And man, just that center section, I just want to like come back to. Being queer is about the self that is at odds with everything around it and has to invent and create and find a place to speak and to thrive and to live. And if that's not like about circus, I feel like it maybe is about everything. Maybe Bell Hooks is just a genius, which, you know, like, yes, of course.
Tiger Woods is.
Right.
Will always be.
But what an incredible expansion of queerness, that queerness is about feeling yourself as an other and finding a way to speak and to thrive and to create and to live as an other without abdicating that, without trying to step back towards the sameness, but being like, no, I am other, I am different. And we should all celebrate that, you know? I think that circus is the art, in a way, of queerness, you know? Like, we always search for, like, ooh, what is circus philosophically? And I don't know, I don't have a great answer to that, nor do I want to propose one here. But I think that it is something about the virtuosity of just being yourself, right? Of just being a different person, and of really how deep can you go into something that is only yours. And that is, in classical circus or contemporary circus, I think really at the root of what a circus artist does is creates an act that is wholly theirs, that is wholly. I had another great teacher of mine, his name was Stephen Stearns, he was a theater artist, says, it's not about being the best, it's about being the only. And maybe he stole that quote from someone, and I don't know, right? So maybe someone else said that, and that's a very famous quote from someone, but I heard it from this guy. So, but it's not about being the best, it's about being the only. And how do I, as a circus educator, bring that into my teaching, right? No, you don't need to do this thing that everyone else does better than everyone else. You need to find your own way around a trapeze. You need to find your own way around inside your own body. And to me, this is what circus education is at its heart, whether we're talking about like really professional, high-level technique, or whether we're talking about, you know, like an adult who does circus for fun, or a 10-year-old who is just looking to kind of like discover their body. We're looking at like fearlessly approaching your own body and your own uniqueness and your own place in the world, right? And I think that has a lot to do with queerness and a lot to do with circus.
Wow, thank you. Many things to ponder there. And it makes me want to go to a closing question that I've been asking of so many people in this particular journey. And I think you have set this up so beautifully for us to do it. How then can we use these impulses, the multiple impulses of the virtuosity of the individual in the circus space? How can we use that to make circus yet more queer friendly?
Yeah, it's such an interesting question, because I feel like circus is queer friendly at its heart, and yet, like, I recognize that it's not really, you know. I think that there is a cultural focus on a sort of sports centricity, a sort of athletic centricity, right? That can sneak its way into circus, where circus starts becoming about being the best instead of about being the only, right? And this is where circus ceases to be circus and starts to be something else. If circus starts to become about being the best instead of about being the only, then it loses both its queerness and in my mind, something about what makes it really circus, you know? I think that COVID provides an opportunity for us to kind of reset and think about how we want the entire performing arts industry to come back, you know? I really land on the side of, do we want to return to the way things were? Like, no. I don't want the performing arts industry to return to the way things were. I want the performing arts industry to come back fundamentally changed. And systems change like that is super hard. You rarely have opportunities to introduce radical change at such a huge level. Like, if you told anyone 4 years ago that pretty much every live performing arts venue is going to be closed, shuttered, for this long, no one would have believed you, you know? I think it's really, the performing arts were already going through an identity crisis around what role do we play in the modern world. And I feel like COVID kind of wiped the slate on what our role in the modern world is supposed to look like. I don't think anyone has those answers. I don't pretend to have those answers. I only have a commitment to making sure we come back different. And that starts in education, or can start in education. The most important people I think to talk to are the producers and casting directors. I don't actually think that the queering of circus comes from the artists. I think the change that we're looking for comes from the people who are doing casting and the people who are producing shows and who are providing the money, you know, because we can, the making of the art and the relevant making of the art is actually kind of the easy thing. The hard thing is casting atypical bodies, right? The hard thing is getting the money to cast atypical bodies. The hard thing is people who are willing to spend the money on art that may not be commercially successful, you know, yeah, what a thought, especially in America. Art that's, yeah. Cool. So I think those are the tricky questions, and those are the people who I'd really want to talk to and see how radical change tastes to them.
You've left us with a lot, Adam. You've left us with a lot. And I am thrilled to know that people will be listening. People will be listening to your words, your thoughts, your energies.
Oh, I hope so. Thank you.
So, hello, John Paul.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm great. I'm in Swedish twilight. It's lovely.
Who doesn't love a Swedish twilight? Thank you for joining us on this glorious journey through Queer Circus. This is episode 3, as you know, and you are continuing to build out our understanding of what it is to be queer in circus, do queer in circus, and think queer in circus. And I'm grateful for your participation in our expansion of that. So, John Paul, I have a bio that you gave me that I think that I will actually read for people to sort of sit, so that might help them situate you. John Paul Zaccarini is Professor of Performing Arts at the Research Center in Stockholm University of the Arts, a practitioner in theater, dance, mime, and circus with a focus on poetry and the spoken word. He has been both performer, auteur, and director, dramaturge, choreographer since 1992. He is currently researching the intersections between art, therapy, and activism in his project Future Brown Space, which is a creative space for BIPOC to work with radical healing and decolonizing artistic research in majority white institutions and fields. Whoa, yes. Celebrate.
Myself.
Yes. As well you should. So after those official words of celebration, I have a follow-up question for that, and it is, what else should the world know about you, John Paul Zaccarini?
I think maybe my training. I trained in theatre and dance, but then previous to that, I had a training in literature. In terms of my education was focused around literature, French, Spanish, and English literature. So my move towards dance and mime and circus was a move away from the theatre and the weight of the canon, of the literary canon, Western as it was. And then it kind of swerved back as an academic into the word again, into knowledge and discourse, but really only through how the word reveals the drive of the body, because I landed in psychoanalysis as a way to help me as a dramaturge in circus. Like, what is the drive here? What is actually going on? You say it's about this, but what I see, it's about this. How do we connect the body and the word? So circus, as I saw it, is not so symptomatic of something unconscious, just compelling itself to be repeated. How could we own this kind of dramatic, dangerous drive that propelled us? So maybe that, yeah.
glorious. The layering is one of the images that I'm picking up from what you're saying. The multiplicities of the postures and ourselves through this work. Speaking of work, you have gloriously provided several images and a clip of a video for us. Do you mind setting up a few of those things for us that we will be seeing pass behind us as we talk through this?
Yeah, I mean, there's two. I mean, one is me climbing a rope under a cascade of water. And I just need to, in terms of citational things, I need to just time that. So that's 1997, just so let's be clear, right? Pre-internet and someone invented this. No, it's pre that. 1997 is me in a cascade of water on a corded lease. So lease slippery enough and smooth enough as it is, add water. And I think that is like an essential trope in circus. If standing on two hands isn't hard enough, try it on one hand and then with a teapot on your foot. This continuation of trying to make, of difficulty being the thing that is staged, and a limit, or in fact, overcoming the possibility of failure is being staged. So to take it one step further is to make the rope slippery, make it more dangerous. And the second is me dragging a dummy, a replica of myself, up and down the rope for 8 boring minutes and never really getting it back to where I think it belongs. So a very Sisyphean feat. And I think both those pieces for me are about kind of the circular futility of circus sometimes. The enjoyment is in the game, not in any kind of completion, because what does it complete? Apart from applause, apart from finishing the act, but it doesn't complete because we fill up again after exhausting ourselves and do it again the next night. So this continuous repetition of the thing that kind of soothes something in us, but we can't ever stop because we never give it meaning. And I think for me, this kind of, those two things point to what I spoke about earlier, point to the drive, which is kind of in psychoanalysis quite a circular thing. It starts full, it kind of circles around its object, never really touches it, and then depletes itself in the search for satisfaction, but doesn't achieve it because it fills itself up the next day to start the whole process again. And I think and going back to what I said earlier about language is that kind of rhetorical thing that turns drive into desire. So we give it a name, right? I desire Charles, I desire a trophy, I desire the car, I desire Sharon. And it gives me an object to go towards. But once I've got Sharon, right, it's still the drive.
Right.
Sharon wasn't it. Betty that I really want. And I just keep on down. So I think I was interested in this attempt to try and civilize and name this drive within circus. And I think it accounts for a lot of this kind of neo-circus theatrics. The theatrical, the character, these aren't balls, these are letters, and I'm a postman, and I'm going to put them in the letterbox, and they keep bouncing back or something. Yeah, so those two pieces for me were like my idea of the core of the impossibility and futility and repetitious nature of circus.
Extraordinary, truly extraordinary work. You also have provided this clip of spoken word clip. Can you also set that up for us?
Yeah, the actual text was about when I heard about these men's groups that they somehow felt a bit beleaguered and just needed a man's movement. It was around the time of Me Too, and I, with a lot of people, like, bitch, no, not yet. Really? No, you don't. Come on, you don't get to have a movement just yet. There's some, clear up your shit before you start pining for and whining for, a movement. And so it was about that. And it was part of an album called the Mixed Race Mixtape. And the video was inspired by kind of a poem I wrote called White Boy Bubblegum, which reversed or inversed the kind of the white fetish upon the black body or the brown body. And then especially in music video, that was the female brown body. So I chose the most athletic, the palest, most athletic looking young men and reversed the gaze and made the gaze brown and queer upon the white and straight, and made those objects of failure. They were passive, kind of literally an inversion of the slave auction block. And I use circus only very minimally in its sense of its use of apparatuses of slings and shackles and chains and entrapment, and the pleasure one has in being entrapped. So that was that video. It was yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for that setup. I would love to go ahead and make a leap as you're speaking of movements and working with other bodies on stage to your work as a trainer and as a pedagogue. And maybe that relationship with queerness. Can you maybe spin some of that work around for us?
Yeah, I can. I mean, anecdotally, the last time I taught, the last time I taught was maybe 2 years ago. Last time I taught circus in the studio with a body on a rope. But it was at the point where as trainers, it's very physical. We touch a lot. You grab someone's hips and you move them into a position because they're upside down. They don't know left from right. They're tipped from their elbow, in the beginning. So you really have to. Language won't do it. But now, because of the state that we are in, thankfully, and the openness and transparency of the kind of abuse of power that happens within training, and circus training as well. I mean, if you're a dancer or an actor, you know this too well. Circus is pure because it's somehow different or freaky or anarchic or rubbish. Literally, I was poking. It was horrible, intrusive. No, left. The sharpest, quickest, most. It can't be misconstrued as anything but severe instruction. Not. But no, in terms of, let's call it queer pedagogy, again, the simplest way I would say it is if a student comes and is trying to fulfill the demands of what she or he thinks are the demands of circus, then that is a subject who is asking to be indoctrinated, is asking, there are rules, tell me exactly what the rules are so I can achieve the image of circus. And circus won't be anything but a repetition of an ideology unless we ask what your desire is, like, why are you here? What is it that you want to achieve against the images that you have seen or what the old vanguard says, or, So my job as a trainer has been to sort of break their training in a way, to ask them, well, how would you train? Like, what is your training? What do you want to see in your future circus? Because you are the future. It won't be me. It will be you. And and your future has to come from your past. So when I say, what do you want? And they say, John Paul, I want to move like you. And I went, okay, then how high are your stakes? Like, what are the stakes? Because if you want to move like me, you need to have lived my life, which promise me you don't want. Where in your life gives you a similar experience of being 8 meters up in the air, hanging by one hand? And there you have your stakes. So why are you here? Which made me a very unpopular teacher because they could never get to their tricks. I was saying, that's not my job. You've got so-and-so to do that. You don't come to me to learn rotation on your doodah. So I think a lot of my pedagogy has been around that. Failure. Like, where is the failure here? This is what makes it human. Because one more flip makes you more superhuman, more further away from me in terms of contacting me and contacting my heart and giving me some sort of kinesthetic empathy which is not to do with shock, you know, and what kind of person does that anyway? Just constantly seeks to shock.
Right. And am I hearing that there's actually a risk of a loss of empathy when you're proposing an idea that when we see yet more heroics on stage, we as humans don't know the hero space, we know the failure space. Yeah. And somehow getting to the failure is something that's arguably yet more human, while at the same time yet more queer. A final question, perhaps. How is it then that we can make circus yet more queer? How is it that we can make circus yet more of this thing that we want to run off with?
Okay, I had an answer, but something else has just popped in my head. We should all do a heteronormative audit. That's what we should do. We need to look at what we're already doing. We need to look at the processes of training and pedagogy, where we're selling, how we're selling, what we're presenting. And if we see, and look at how are we, in even small ways, repeating colonial versions of gender, colonial versions of sexuality, because they're colonial. They're from the West. I mean, you know, they are not intrinsic to the whole world. If we are still repeating those things, then we're still repeating violence in some way or another. And I'm converging the queer and the colonial here, but only because when I think of queer, it's an anti-colonial expression. You know, it says my sexuality should not be used as an instrument of conquering, of power and of wealth creation, which is what colonialism was and still is in its neo version. So I would say that if we see someone, a pair acrobat duo, do a floppy dead woman act, you go, nay, we don't want any more rapey rhetoric happening in our practices. Just some of them are really obvious and some of them are not. But yeah, an audit about colonial and heteronormative paradigms. There we go. Nothing to do with being more gay or being homosexual, but what heteropatriarchal colonial ideologies are we somehow unconsciously repeating in both training and the images that we present on stage? That's how.
I love this as a proposal, that there is actually something practical in this with the theoretical work, and there is something hugely practical that you've actually left us pondering here as we close our conversation, Jean-Paul.
Thank you so much for this.
I must thank you. Thank you for being a part of the journey and taking us many steps along the way. See you soon then.
Bye.
Hello, Zed.
Hi.
And welcome to this magical series that has been this journey through queer circus. It's amazing that you've joined us today. And once again, I thank you. Thank you for being
here. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you.
It's really great. So if you don't mind, I will swiftly move into the biography that you gave, and then I'll do a follow-up question on that, if that's okay.
Great.
So introducing you to our viewers and listeners and experiencers and all of that. This paragraph that you provided says that Zed Cézard is a circus artist with a PhD in art sciences, that you're a coach, a speaker, and an author. On one hand, you've been following a scientific and academic trajectory around the issues of arts, culture, and identity, gender, and trans feminism that has given rise to numerous publications about clowning in particular. And then on the other hand, you have realized a self-taught artistic path that's allowed you to work all over the world, including at the 41st Festival Mondial du Cirque de Demain, where you won these two really amazing prizes, the Prix Spécial du Jury and the Coup de Cœur du Festival, with your act of flying Holt. So that's that. official paragraph that I have, but I have to do this follow-up question. Now that we know that part, what does our global audience need to know about you?
The audience need to know about me just simply because we need visibility. So just just appearing to the world, for me, it's like we are here. I represent kind of, you know, a queer community. So just to be here, for me, it's already a thing in itself.
Brilliant. If the camera would let me, I'd be leaping right now. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. That's absolutely amazing. So then with that, now that you've allowed us to think about this as space, right, and presence, and moving towards and against certain things, we'll be watching some images of you and maybe some video as well as we talk. And I'm wondering if you could set the stage for us. What are we watching as we see these images and this video? Tell us more.
There is some images about shows where I performed. I was lucky about this, to have a platform to express my art, but myself in the same time. Because I think the both are really linked, and I am of this artist as an artist that art for me is an expression of myself, of my point of view, of see other things that people don't see like me. So I had this chance to perform in those shows. And the other things we can see are images, photography in particular, that I did during the pandemic, because it was hard to work. So I had to find some solution to express all the things I had inside. And for me, it was the photography that sounds great to me, to show that. So I did some picture about the body, about the part of the body as questioning who we are, and we disturbing the brain about the part of the body, and also about the gender question of gender, you know, like gender fuck, like fuck the brain about the question of gender, you know. So all these pictures express these issues.
Extraordinary. And if I could do a follow-up to that, I was also during the pandemic, I saw your production Blue. That also you include in the video clip, or at least you include a couple of segments from that. Could you maybe give some background to that piece, if that's okay?
Yeah, please. Circus produced this show during the pandemic. It's Matthew Richardson who made that. So I was a lucky one to participate at this project. We wanted to link circus with a question more. Gender questioning, you know, and visibility also. So we build this performance around gender with my voice that speak around some what people think, what I heard, and how I feel about this. It's a great message about the differences, and we are all the same, you know, through that. Because we are all different, so let's accept that. That's what the point of the Blue video clip, and it was really great to have these platforms. And I had to thank Matthew about this opportunity and this platform and all the work he did and he do for us.
Brilliant. So maybe I want to springboard from that and ask you if you want to tell us just a little bit more then about your own particular experiences as a queer artist and what it means to make queer work. Specific challenges you may have had, specific joys you may have discovered.
Yeah, for me, there is a lot of challenge, of course. First, to find work, to find a place, because even on the, even on the audition publication, they ask always for a male or female or male and female. So when I see that, I'm like, okay, how I feel about that, where I am, where I can fit. So it's always a big question for me, and sometimes I ask and they told me like, no, you are not that or that. So sometimes I can't even go to the right audition, I don't have a place in that. So for me, it's kind of challenge, and when I find work, the other challenge is how much I can compromise who I am to fit in what they want. So that's a hard part for me. Sometimes I had to wear some makeup, like girl makeup, or sometimes I had to wear like dresses or some stuff I didn't felt always comfortable with that. So sometimes I ask, sometimes no. There is always a line where I try to, it's like walking on a wire and just try not falling, because there is a, make concession and continue to represent who I am, So that's a hard part for me in the challenge. And for the joy, of course, is work, visibility, figure in the show, and when people want me, there is it's a joy for me. They want me because of my work, regardless about my queerness, or they want me because of who I am. So that's the best, in those two cases, it's great for me to work. So, there is a good thing, like, and le revers de la médaille is,
The other side of that coin. Yeah. I'm totally hearing that. And thank you for sharing that. As a part of your work, I also know that you've worked with individuals and with groups as a trainer, right? And as a pedagogue. And a part of the focus of this episode is asking about that aspect of your work. And I'm wondering if you could tell us more about that. Is there a space for queerness as a trainer, as a pedagogue, as working with others, and what that queerness might be? Do you have thoughts about that?
Yeah. But for me, that's I had not experimented difficulty about that. I always felt like welcome, because the students comes to you, so they wanted to work with you, about you, with your work, with your approach. So I always felt like really appreciated and really, and also it was a good way to represent, to be in front of these students, because the young people are the future, and the more they see me, the more they can figure a place for everyone. So for me, it's a lucky place to be coach, and it was always a good experience.
More power to you for that. That's giving me joy listening to you as you speak to that. Well, maybe that's where I want to go in this next step is how is it that, because you spoke of the future, right? How is it that we can make circus even more friendly, more joyous, more queer focused or accepting? Do you have thoughts about that?
Yeah, but I think, as I said, the important thing is visibility, just inclusivity and diversity about all the artists that can exist, and show us as we are, and not trying to fit us in some place already made, like just take us as we are and show to the world that we are the same even if we are different, we have the same feeling, we have the same emotion to share, we have the same passion for the circus. So I hope they need to hire us for that, and we need to show that to the audience. I am convicted that it's a need to, comment dire, I am convinced that it's really the audience is really enjoying about seeing difference and seeing queer people, because it's art. So art is for showing differences and showing other paths and way to live and way of life and different stuff. So this is a place to do that, and audience know that. So it's cool to join these people and the audience through the art, you know. And for me, we need this space, and we need to occupy this space. So we need to be here on the stage as we are.
Yeah. And do I hear in what you're saying is that, and not just in underground spaces, we need to be, you're saying this, we queer artists need to occupy mainstream spaces and other multi spaces. Is that what I'm hearing?
Oh, yeah, because absolutely. I think underground, we have already an audience that knows us, that's accepting, you know. So of course, we need to go mainstream, like big time. Yeah, we need that. We need people to see us, really, like people who are not used to, because we need to join the big team, you know. We need to make one. If we separate each other, it's not great, because we will stay in a space in comfort, and they will stay in comfort zone, and you know, we never learn things when we are in our comfort zone. So it's good to share, you know, through the art. For me, it's really important. It's a good material, art, you know. It's the best one.
Oh, truly joyous listening to you, because yes, working with art as on stage, and then also coaching others who are going to be doing more art on more stages. Glorious. Well, I've been super honored to talk to you, Zed. Here, and we're speaking to each other from where? You are currently in
Montreal.
In Montreal.
My very desk.
And I'm in upstate New York in my office, and we are contributing to, at least hopefully anyway, and listening to your words, that our queer worlds will continue to grow.